everybody. Welcome to another fabulous episode of Thyroid Refresh TV. We're so glad to be back with you again today. I'm Dana Bowman, co-founder of Thyroid Refresh and Thyroid 30.
And I'm Ginny Mahar, the other co-founder of Thyroid Refresh and Thyroid 30. And we are thrilled to be here today with Dr. Beth Westie. Welcome, Beth. Thank you for joining us.
Yay. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great to see you again. Before we jump in and dive in discussing some really great topics with Dr. Beth Westie, I wanted to give a big thank you to those of you who have left iTunes reviews. We don't have enough for them to show up right this moment, but they are so helpful because we are leading a healthy thyroid lifestyle movement, and every little teeny tiny bit helps. And this will just help more people find us. So if you could and would, we would really appreciate an iTunes review. Okay, well, let's get started. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we're going to be talking to Dr. Westie today about all kinds of women's health issues. She's a women's health expert, so we're going to be covering some ground on weight loss, on seed cycling, and on women's hormonal issues in this sort of the whole big picture. It's sort of hard to sum up, but Dana, why don't you tell us a little bit about Dr. Beth before we get started?
Absolutely. Dr. Beth Westie was born and raised on a small goat farm in Minnesota, which I think is so cool. After collecting a pair of state volleyball titles, she turned her higher education into the form of an NMU Wildcat. Oh, that's really wonderful. Dr. Westie was able to combine her love of sport alongside her passion for women's health. And upon graduation, she with a bachelor's in biology and physiology. Let's see, what did you do next? Well, you're the author of the Female Fat Solution and the creator of the 12-week Female Fat Solution Challenge. You're a mom of 2, certified acupuncturist, Doctor of Chiropractic, and she is here to talk to us today about female health. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm really excited.
So you have an interesting thyroid story.
Yeah.
Should we start with that?
Yeah, we can start with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as my thyroid issues started, I'll start kind of at my story. So, I was an athlete in high school and then in college and then went to graduate school, chiropractic school. And, I was, I don't want to say the easiest on my body, but I was an athlete, right? Like it was like go, go, go all the time. And, I ate, I want to say fairly well for, for what I did, but so I never thought that I would have any major issues. Right. And I was, in school and I learned a ton about more natural holistic health, even better nutrition, that type of a thing. And so I was actually a student when I got pregnant with my son and then had him. And what's really interesting, and I don't know if you guys have had this with other people when they share their thyroid stories, but I didn't know of any thyroid issues in my family. So that was never anything that was on my radar, right? That was never anything that I would even think of, right? Like there's a history of like allergies and asthma, right, in my family. So those are things that I was more aware of. So after my son was born, I got fatigued. So exhausted. Like I couldn't even carry him from the car into Target without having to stop and take a break as a baby, like that tired. And I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? I just need to push harder. I know being a new mom is really tough, but I got to suck it up and, just keep going right. And it wasn't until I think it was like one of his 2 months appointment or something like that, where somebody else in the room with me, one of the other like nurses was like, are you okay? You seem like, just like lifting the baby and I would be like, oh, so exhausted, like physically hard for me to do things. And as an athlete, like I was always a big, strong gal, right? Like I'm 6'2". I'm huge. You can't tell I'm on a little screen right now, but I am 6'2", like, 190, like I heavy lift, power lift, all that, right? Like this is picking up like a 9-pound baby should not be hard, right? I was so out of it. And the mental fatigue that you get along with the physical fatigue with thyroid. So I had no idea. I just thought I needed to be tougher. And then of course, thyroid was never on my radar at all because no one talked about it. And then one of the nurses said something, well, maybe you're anemic, hun. Maybe you need to get some more iron in or something. Let's do a blood test for you. So popped over, to the adult area, got a blood test, and lo and behold, it was thyroid. And I had postpartum thyroiditis after each of my 3 kids were born. So, and they're all 2 years apart. So boom, 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 right in a row. All of them. I had the hyper, then hypothyroid, and struggled with that for years. And then I was told by my endocrinologist that because I had burned out my thyroid so many times in a short span of years, that it probably would never recover and I'd have to be on thyroid medication forever. And I was like, I don't like that. I'm going to figure out a different way, right? So stubborn. And that's one of the things that led me into more women's health stuff. Like, what else can I do? What else can I, look at? How can I work with my body more to shift and change, what I'm on? So I used a lot of Ayurvedic things, herbs, changed my diet, and was able to, after I was done having babies and done nursing, I was able to really focus on my thyroid health and come out of that phase. And I don't have any, I got off of my thyroid medication and I haven't been on it in 6.5 years now. Yeah.
And no symptoms. So
no. Yeah.
Wow.
And look at you, all 6'2". I think we should put that in your bio. Holy moly.
6'2", beast of a gal.
Wow.
So when people talk about thyroid stuff, I feel like if you've never had thyroid stuff, you don't really understand how much it just takes you down and out sometimes.
Yeah.
Think about that. This is what I couldn't understand. I'm like, this baby is 9 pounds. Why is he so heavy? He's and I'd lift him and I'd be shaking and my arms would be so tired.
Well, and it's funny because you don't know. You're a new mom and you see other new moms, doing stuff and you're like, well, whatever. You don't know what their struggle is, but also, you think, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you may have caught the woman you're looking at carrying this baby who just had her baby at her great moment where she had lots of strength. And you're like, well, she can do it. And you just don't know, right? You just don't know. And you compare yourself and you're like, this is part of the deal. I'm supposed to be tired. And so you don't really question things because you're like, I'm a new mom. I'm supposed to be tired. I'm not going to complain to my doctor about how tired I am because they're going to go, of course, honey, you're a new mom. And so you just don't say anything. That's a whole other thing. You quiet, you don't communicate that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then when I finally got diagnosed with thyroid issues, with the thyroiditis, one of the things they ask is, oh, well, it must run in your family. And I was like, not that I know of, so I had to call my mom. My mom called, on her side of the family, no one has thyroid issues. She had to call my dad's grandma's sister's cousin or so, something I've never even met these people in my life. Right. And then she knew of one other person that had a thyroid issue. Right. So who knows why, who knows what, but in terms of sometimes when people get diagnosed, they might be thinking, oh, my mom has thyroid issues. I should probably get mine checked. Not necessarily. So if you miss it, don't feel bad.
Well, and I think we talked to you about this before, but you don't have any antibodies and your tests are all because you know what to look for and things. But it's interesting because your story is a little bit different than a lot of the thyroid patients, usually you can't get it to where you have gotten yours. And so you just can't take anything for granted. You just never know.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And that was what my endocrinologist told me, was for me specifically, because he was like, you know what, you've gone through this a lot in a short amount of time and your thyroid's, going to be burned out. You won't be able to get it to produce on its own anymore because it goes hyper, then hypo, and then there's just no chance it's going to regulate. And I was just like, I'm going to try.
What do you think was key in enabling you to do that and to get off medication?
It was, I mean, I really, really was very, very diligent about my self-care and listening to my body and seeing an Ayurvedic practitioner that helped. Because again, you know, as a, like through this whole process, I was getting my own doctorate, you know, in chiropractic. I studied acupuncture. I'm certified in Eastern medicine and specialize in fertility issues and cycle issues for women. And of course, I was still like, doctors are the worst patients ever, you know? So I knew that I had to put my health in the hands of somebody else and say, this is what I want. I want this outcome. Because I wasn't like this before I had kids. Having kids sometimes wrecks your bod. I want to, you know, I want to be good on the other side of this. Can we get there? And she said, yep, we'll try.
Well, and can we just add some really good genes? I'm just saying, you got some really good genes going on. I mean, well, because it's also one of those stories. You had to get your second mom's cousin's friend's sister's daughter before you could, right? You know, and my mom has thyroid, and my sister has thyroid, and my grandmother and my great grandmother, and Jenny's mom has thyroid. And so it's again, you know, you just never know. So I'm just going to stick with my good genes, you know, concept for you. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is that you never know where it's going to be passed down on, you know, some of these things, right? Like, where did you get this from? It was somebody way off in my family tree that had a thyroid issue, you know, so there it is. It's like being colorblind. My son is colorblind, and I didn't know of anybody else in my family that's colorblind. No one in my husband's family is colorblind. I had to call my mom again, and she had to get on the horn, and somebody on my dad's side, you know, same thing. Wow. Yeah. Is that funny?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and it takes so much energy to raise kids too, you know, that it's so wonderful that you were able to do that. And Ayurveda, you know, that's not something you hear people, I know how powerful it is, like ancient science, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about Ayurveda for those of us who aren't super familiar with how it works, what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner at all. I have studied it. I use a lot of the herbs, things like that. And I love it, but there aren't really a lot of Ayurvedic schools in the country. I think there's only 2. I think so. And I live in Minneapolis. So there's none in the Midwest at all. But since I'm trained in like Eastern medicine and acupuncture, and people are more familiar with that. So I describe it as being, you know, acupuncture and Chinese medicine comes from China, and it's thousands of years old. Ayurveda is thousands of years old, but based in India. So they use, you know, there's a whole different diagnostic, like if you've been to get acupuncture, their diagnosis, you know, their exam and diagnosis process is very different than Western medicine. It's the same thing for Ayurveda. It's, they look at your body, they feel your pulses, they'll look at your tongue. They really do a very different, you know, examination of your system and your constitution, and then make recommendations from there. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. We really wanted to dig in with you a little bit after we talked to you on your podcast about, and we got into this kind of juicy post-show discussion, and we were like, we have to talk about this and have you on our show. But can you tell us about this hormonal kind of tipping point that a lot of women reach and start to have complications, and, you know, maybe ultimately even end up with thyroid issues, as, you know, with that as part of the root cause? Or, you know, can you sort of just take that and run with it?
Yeah. Yes. So the work that I do primarily is with women and their hormones related to estrogen and progesterone. And this stems from a lot of the, you know, the Eastern medicine work I did around fertility and cycle issues. And what I did was create a nutrition program that actually matches your body, your female hormones every week throughout the month, because every week your hormones are different as you go throughout the month. So kind of makes sense that you would match what you're eating to what your hormonal nutritional needs are for that period of time. And that way your body can help maintain the right amount of estrogens, the right amount of progesterones to keep things in balance, because those hormones are really easily influenced by other things and can get thrown off really quickly. So for example, a couple of things that most gals have had happen in their lives. If you're under a lot of stress, your period might be a few days late, right? And then when you get it, it's like, oh, it's terrible, right? That's stress. That's cortisol affecting your cycle and your hormones. And it doesn't take very long for that to happen, right? Your hormones are also impressionable in that if you've ever lived with other gals, like in college, move into a house with a bunch of other gals, it doesn't take very long for all your cycles to link up, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you can,
actually.
yeah, isn't that cool? Like our bodies are so in tune with whatever is around us that on a different level that we don't even realize. And so,
for better or worse sometimes.
Well, right. And a side tidbit is I just went with some girls and did a kind of a weekend getaway, and it was my time of the month, and the rest of them were like, no, no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stay away from us, right?
Yeah. But that's absolutely, our bodies are so, reactive to the environments that we're in, and, our hormones are. And so another piece of that for a lot of women is that your hormone, your cycle and the estrogen and progesterone can get thrown off from thyroid issues too. Cortisol is a big factor, but also so is thyroid. If you have thyroid issues and say you're having in my case, it was a thyroid flare, or if you're having a hard time or your thyroid levels are changing, it can absolutely change your cycle. And then you'll have a lot of other issues with that, right? Like if some women are trying to get pregnant, they're not going to ovulate, or they're not going to ovulate at the right time, and then they miss that window, or then their PMS symptoms get really, really bad. Like your PMS gets worse. Your cycle gets a lot worse. And that's just, I work with women, sometimes I get messages that, I can't get out of bed for days. I'm in so much pain, I go through, 3 pads every hour, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like it can get really horrible for women. And so that's the type of work that I do, okay, yes, work on some holistic dietary things for thyroid, but if you're not also paying attention to those female hormones, then you're kind of waiting for the trickle down to happen. The estrogen and progesterone is oftentimes downstream, right? Sometimes there is an issue with that specifically, but a lot of times it's more upstream that there's an issue that impacts, and those hormones just get thrown off. So at the same time that we work on, some holistic things getting better, we also work on, okay, let's work with the estrogen, let's work with progesterone to get them functioning and working in harmony with each other and balance the way that they should, so that those issues turn around that much faster.
What are some of the ways we can get upstream and get ahead of those issues?
Well, one of the main ones, like stress, right? Stressors are all the inflammation, everything that gets thrown off. There's all these other things that we're exposed to in our lives, whether it be, the 3 main things are, toxins, thoughts, and traumas, in terms of things that throw your body off. And so like pretty much everything can be grouped into those 3 categories. And then,
TTT.
Yep. Toxins, thoughts, and traumas. Yep. Mm-hmm. And that's a chiropractic terminology of looking at how the body gets thrown off. So some people, if they're not familiar with it, that's because it comes from the origins of chiropractic. But from there, those 3 things that negatively affecting your body and system, it can throw off a lot of things in how everything functions together. Because you really are, nothing is separate from anything else. Also, another thing for women's health that I get super frustrated with, when women are like, oh, I have PCOS and thyroid issues. They see different people for those 2 issues, and no one's looking at their whole body, right? They're looking at their female hormones as just like, oh, it's right here. It's like, no, those hormones go everywhere in your body. They cross the blood-brain barrier. Come on. So why wouldn't you work with them too? Or at least work on something that affects all of it together. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got on a little rant there.
That's okay. You're passionate.
I am. I get so mad.
Let it out. Just let her rip.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm sure, I know this is so relatable for me, and I'm sure for a lot of women out there, just that, like, why is it getting worse? And how does my thyroid factor into this? I know you kind of touched on that. And then and then like the weight gain or trying to lose weight just seems impossible. Like, do those things, how do those puzzle pieces fit together? I'm sorry, that's probably a really difficult question to answer, simply, but.
Yeah. So if I break it down into like very simple things, a lot of the base of those hormones of thyroid, estrogen, and progesterone, they're very similar, or they'll start off with, at the same place, and then different cofactors affect it, and they go down different pathways and become this estrogen. You have 7 types of estrogen in your body, so it can become one, like different pathways to this type of estrogen, different pathways here. This is progesterone, different pathways. Here's, they're very dynamic and kind of interconnected. So they all do affect one another. And so if you are having an issue with your thyroid, or say, again, I'll just call it a thyroid flare, right? So like something's off, right? You're like, okay, something's not working. I'm having more thyroid symptoms, etc. That's going to definitely affect the other hormones it's connected with in your body. And stress is another thing too. When those cortisol levels rise, it will pull from that thyroid too, and it will pull from estrogen as well. So a lot of women will, and then the other hard thing too is that it can be difficult to differentiate between, is it a true thyroid issue or is it a true estrogen issue? Is it both? Because a lot of the symptoms can be very similar. I'm tired, I have brain fog, I feel exhausted after I work out. That could be thyroid, that could be estrogen, right? Yeah. So you have to look at a different layer of it and say, okay, how well am I recovering? How has my cycle been? Has it been regular? Has it been even? Have I had, symptoms or not? Things like that.
Well, then the cortisol comes in, and, that gets so tangled up with our weight too, and our and all kinds of things. So yeah, thank you. I think that does sort of put those puzzle pieces together for us.
Yeah. Yes. And then the whole weight loss, and then weight gain and inability to lose for women, especially our whole weight loss journey in general, it's going to be very different. Again, you have 4 different bodies throughout the month. So it's easier during certain weeks for you to make progress for weight loss than it is during other weeks, because your body's metabolism was working faster at some points and slower at other points, naturally. And then you layer in thyroid issues on top of that.
So basically you're saying, if you have a scale, there are certain times of the month you want to get on it, and other times you just don't.
Yes. Well, and I recommend for women who weigh themselves. Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. For women, I recommend, if you're going to weigh yourself every week, you shouldn't compare yourself to the previous week. That's a whole different body. You should compare your body to what it was last month at that same time. That's a true look. Yeah. Chemically, then you're the same body. There are certain times of the month you should weigh more. You should have more blood volume, right? If you don't weigh more, that's a problem. But everybody's ingrained, and we look at our bodies and weight loss and progress as a male-centric viewpoint, meaning week to week, you should lose weight. If you don't lose a pound a week, then you're getting off track.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's for a man.
Yeah, a linear path, and it's not for women at all. Right. It's more like a loop-de-loop that sort of goes in the same, forward direction.
I like that.
We sort of circle back around and keep going forward. Okay, so I love this. The 4 different bodies. You have 4 different bodies throughout the course of a 1-month cycle.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll chunk it apart into 2 just because it's easier to talk about. Days 1 through 14, and then days 15 through 28. Some people call this like the luteal and follicular phase, blah, blah, blah. Nobody pays attention to that because nobody uses that vernacular regularly. Nobody's like, oh, I'm day 3 of my luteal phase.
I'm so luteal right now.
Oh, luteal. I want that on a shirt, by the way. So luteal today.
We need to make some t-shirts.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
That's so great. Yeah. So I just talk about it in terms of estrogen and then progesterone. Your body is higher in estrogen days 1 through 14, and then higher in progesterone days 15 through 28. So the benefit of estrogen, and you have to have the right amount of the right estrogens, of course. People who are estrogen dominant, it throws off that balance between estrogen and progesterone, creates issues. But if we're looking at everything that's good and progressing towards that, estrogen during days 1 through 14 being higher, it will increase your metabolism. You will get more energy from it. Your digestive system is working better then. You have a better thought process. It's easier to start habits or start a new program, something like that. When you're looking at really making results in terms of weight loss, it's easier to build muscle. It's faster to recover from a workout, and you can burn more carb. Estrogen burns carbs naturally. Also, a side note for people with thyroid issues, generally have issues processing carbohydrate, grains, things like that, right? So this is a point in your cycle where you can capitalize on, oh, look, estrogen's going to help my body burn more carb by layering in certain techniques like a certain type of carb cycle. You can assist your body in learning how to process carb a little bit better during that time. Isn't that fun?
Yeah. How do you do that?
Yeah. Come on. What's the secret?
Yeah. So carb cycling is just alternating the amount of carbs that you're eating day to day. Again, there's most of the patterns out there. They're really a male pattern of carbs. They're like super low for 3 or 4 days, and then 1 day of high carb, and then low again. For the female body, again, anything that's really extreme, going back and forth too quick, that's hard in our systems, right? And especially not having enough carbohydrate is going to zap your energy, be too stressful on your body dynamic, all that stuff, which then creates the opposite result you want. So I recommend doing a slower, more tapered carb cycle, say over like 5 days, where you're having, say, a serving or 2 more every day, up and then down, up and then down. Some people track this through macros on a, phone app or something. Some people just say, oh, I'm going to have, more carb, Wednesday and take a serving off, until I get down to, you should always have at least, 50 gram of carb a day is real low. That's like bare bones for what you need. And if you're active or exercising, your body's under stress, that's way too low. So these are the things that I work with women on in the program that I have, is that it's custom and tailored for what you need, your body needs. So if you're under stress and you're really active and you got kids and you're on the go and this whole thing is happening at work and you want to get your metabolism going and you want a carb cycle, awesome, but you can't go as low then as other women because it will actually backfire on you.
So that carb cycling, when you go up the mountain and then kind of down the other side, is that, I'm sorry if you already said this, how long of a time frame does that take place over?
Yeah, you can do it over 5 days, over a week. A week is sort of the longer end of it. I have women do it for at least 5 days at a time, going through a phase of like 5 days of a carb cycle. It's long enough where you're doing it, it's not going to be too long, yet it's not too short. You're not having like really low and then really high and then really low, and kind of hard on our systems. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So this reminds me of something that I have been really dying to ask you about, that it might seem a little bit off, but I think it ties in here. Seed cycling.
Yes.
That's something I've been hearing a lot about. It sounds like a farming term. Like, oh, I'm like rotating my crops or something. But can you tell us about seed cycling and how we can use it to support us hormonally throughout our monthly cycle?
Yes. Yeah. So when we look at that, we're looking at like days 1 through 14 being for estrogen. Days 15 through 28 is more for progesterone, right? So then the opposite end of that too, when we talk about increasing metabolism, burning carbs for estrogen, progesterone has the opposite effect. It's going to actually slow things down more. It's tougher to build and maintain muscle. Your digestive system slows down, right? So it's the opposite that happens. So that's not a phase where you should expect to see a lot of progress in weight loss. But that's also a phase where a lot of women have the PMS symptoms. They get fatigued. And if you have thyroid issues, it makes that phase really tough sometimes. Really, really tough. So seed cycling is sort of a basic version of using seeds different times of the month to really leverage your hormones. So what I teach women in my book and program is really how to use all of the food that you're eating and match it with estrogen and progesterone. Seed cycling is just using these seeds. So it's pumpkin and flaxseed during days 1 through 14 during the estrogen phase, and then sesame and sunflower during days 15 through 28 during the progesterone phase. That's it. Just consume 1 tablespoon of each of those seeds during each time, and there it is. So during days 1 through 14, have a tablespoon of pumpkin and a tablespoon of flaxseed every day. And you can get them in super fun ways, like add them in a smoothie or put them in your salad, or, you know, I like to grind mine up and I actually make protein energy balls with them. I'll make protein breakfast cookies. I'll make seed cycling muffins. Like, I've got a ton of recipes for seed cycling. So just focusing on the pumpkin flax days 1 through 14. And then when ovulation happens and all those hormones shift over, it's sesame and sunflower. Just, again, same thing, 1 tablespoon of each. And again, just get it in every day. If you want to just eat them raw, a spoonful, great. Sesame is a little bit of a different flavor.
Yeah,
right. So, taste. You can make salad dressings with that, and
yeah, so many different options to get these seeds in. Yeah, it's just being consistent with getting them in. And they actually, each of them have different vitamins and minerals and things in them that help your body produce the right amount of estrogen and progesterone at different times of the month, and to keep that pattern going. You're working with the ebb and flow of your hormones. Again, this is a downstream effect, right? Where of course it's going to help give you energy because you're getting protein, you're getting healthy fats, you're getting great, right? But at the same time that you're trying to maybe decrease the stress and inflammation in your system, you can also be really, you know, getting your hormones to be on the right timing so that that horrible PMS stops, you know, or that if you're trying to get pregnant, yes, you know that your cycle is going to be on point.
Yeah. And how do, this is so fascinating. So how do those recommendations change from you when someone also has a thyroid issue? Do you, are there like a dietary wise, I'm wondering about food and things. Do you say, well, since you have a thyroid issue, then you shouldn't eat this or that, or you should add in this or that, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So overall, when we're looking at thyroid, the main things that are irritating for thyroid, of course, are going to be things, you know, sugars are really irritating. Nightshade vegetables are really irritating. Grains can be really, really tough to process. But, you know, it's really mainly working with how much inflammation is in your body at one time. So the work that I do with women, I really focus on, okay, is it, and for most women, it is that there's certain times in the month where it is worse for them and their inflammation will skyrocket and then, you know, sort of trigger back the thyroid issue that they're having because, oh crap, my progesterone is off. I'm having a lot of PMS. I don't feel good. So my inflammation's going up here. It's going to trigger thyroid here too. So again, working on both of them is really, really important. But if you can manage and get your cycle down and be really, really regular, it does help then prevent a lot of irritation and flare up for that thyroid. But sugars, you know, I want to say it's kind of the general stuff that people always recommend. Sugars, things like that. Managing stress. Yeah. Sometimes I do recommend some adaptogens to help with the stress and get your body to process it better. Yeah. Sometimes, though, it often is an individualized, you know, thing. Somebody might not have a gallbladder. Somebody, you know, might have a specific issue like that we have to work around.
Somebody might be coming into menopause as well.
Yes.
Like, how does that sort of change things? Can these measures like help with that? Can they even maybe like delay the onset or?
So the seed cycling has been shown to actually improve a ton of perimenopause and menopause symptoms. Okay. And so it helps your body stay more regular, even though the overall production of estrogen and progesterone drops. I mean, it's not like there's no estrogen and progesterone. It just, the level drops a lot. So as it drops, though, that's where your body goes all haywire during the dropping process. So the seed cycling helps you just be really regular with the smaller amount that you have, but it tells it when to fire at the right time.
Interesting.
Yeah. So eating for your hormones and eating for your cycle, and the seed cycling still does benefit the body a ton, even as it shifts and changes. Isn't that cool?
Wow. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Our bodies are amazing.
Aren't they?
They really are. No, they really, really are.
Well, awesome.
Like, you know, it's funny because, you know, I remember being amazed as a kid. I never really wanted to be in the health field, but I remember being amazed at like getting a cut and just like washing it and then it just like would heal itself.
Yeah.
Like I remember thinking, That's really cool. You know, I mean, our bodies are truly magnificent.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Dr. Westie.
Yes.
Before we wrap it up, we like to try to leave our listeners with a few actionable tips they can implement to, help with everything we've been talking about today: weight loss, hormone balance, seed cycling, things like that. Is there any parting words you can leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one tip that I do like to tell people, because a lot of people will talk about sleep is really important, managing stress is really important, of course, right? The one thing that I do like to stress for women to understand is when you're making a health change, whether it be with sleep or stress or, thyroid or healthy eating or exercise, you need to give your body the correct amount of time for it to imprint. And that's at least 12 weeks. If you're doing something and you're saying, oh, it's been 30 days, this isn't working, it hasn't been enough time for you. It really does take more time for your body to really have it sink in, because you have 4 different bodies throughout the month. You only get to have that one body just for that 1 week of time. So it needs that repeat of what you're doing for it to really imprint and be consistent. Yeah. And then I do have I can give you guys the link and you can post it below. I have I actually have a free seed cycling brochure that I just created because seed cycling is so important. So if they want to click it, download it's a free little ebook with exactly what to do when, how it helps, how to troubleshoot, all that stuff. Really detailed information about how to do seed cycling. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so glad that we talked about that then.
Yeah. It's so funny because I just finished it.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely put that in the show notes. So if you're interested in downloading that, check out the show notes for that and for more on Dr. Beth Westie. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of Thyroid Refresh TV, where we give you the inspiration and information you need to make the best choices for your health. If you'd like to receive a free Thyroid Thrivers grocery guide, you can visit thyroidrefresh.com. And to learn more about Thyroid 30, our revolutionary 30-day wellness adventure, go to thyroidrefresh.com/thyroid30. You do have the power to heal, and we have the tools. If you've enjoyed this podcast and would like to help us continue inspiring and empowering thyroid patients worldwide, please leave us a review on iTunes. It would make our day. And never forget that you are what makes this the amazing community and resource that it is. We so appreciate your listenership and your support. We're Dana and Ginny here with Dr. Beth Westie, wishing you the best of health. See you next time.